Good morning, everyone. We're starting our planning board meeting of February 19th. Good morning. The first item this morning is adoption of resolutions. We have three. The first is Shady Grove Preliminary Plan Amendment. The second is Shady Grove Site Plan, and the third is Shady Grove Forest Conservation Plan. Do I have a motion to approve these three resolutions?
Move to approve the resolutions.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The ayes have it, 5-0. Next is approval of minutes. We have two this morning, the minutes of January 22nd and the minutes of January 29th. Do I have a motion to approve these two sets of minutes?
Move to approve the minutes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The ayes have it, 5-0. The next, we have one record plat this morning, subdivision plat number 2/2025-0510, Springvale Terrace, where staff is recommending approval. Do I have a motion to approve this record plat?
Move to approve the record plat.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The ayes have it, aye, 5-0. Next, we have one regulatory extension, Primrose at 16550 Georgia Avenue, preliminary plan extension request number 6, where staff is recommending approval of the extension. Do I have a motion for approval of this extension?
Move to approve the extension request.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The ayes have it, 5-0. The next, we have our round table discussion this morning with the Parks Director, Mitty Figueredo. Welcome.
Thank you so much, and good morning, and happy Black History Month. At Montgomery Parks, we've been celebrating with a number of events, including Family Day at Woodlawn, and Josiah Henson hosted a virtual book club earlier in the month. And pictured here, Jubilee Voices was at Josiah Henson Museum this past Sunday. They are part of the Washington Rebels. This is a group that was founded in 2010, and they perform throughout the D.C. area, preserving African-American history and traditions through music and dance. We also have a couple of other Black History Month events coming up. A Family Day at Josiah Henson on February 28th. It's actually themed around what life was like for children at Dawn, which was the settlement that Josiah Henson founded in Canada. So that one sounds very special. And also there's an art event at Oakley Cabin also on February 28th. We also just celebrated Martin Luther King Day cleanup events. That's a day of service, and we had 14 different cleanup events across parks. The folks who were doing the cleanups removed almost 10,000 pounds of trash. It was 376 volunteers who worked in parks that day, and their total value of volunteer hours contributed came out to almost $28,000. So we're grateful to them for these acts of service and cleaning up our parks. We also, for MLK Day, had Weed Warrior events. There were 6 events. I'm going to let you watch for a second this video on the left that's a time lapse of weed warriors removing vines from a tree. You can see how difficult this is. This took a very long time. This is an oriental bittersweet vine, very invasive, and of course if these vines are left on the trees, they can kill the trees. So 48 weed warriors worked over 200 hours, and again, the value of that time was almost $8,000. We also had additional 36 one-day volunteers, bringing the total amount of volunteers doing weed removal to 84, and they freed over 300 trees and shrubs from these invasive vines. So we really appreciate their extremely hard work. So we know that restroom access is really important to park visitors. We know because our surveys have told us this, and we also hear it anecdotally as well from council members and from residents. But restrooms are expensive, they're complex, so we have a study underway that is going to help establish where we need additional restrooms and what kind of restrooms they should be. As part of this effort, for the past 2 years, staff have been collecting data on our existing park restrooms. We need to know where they are and what kinds of bathrooms we have, and what they cost for us to maintain. Also last fall, we hosted 2 engagement events in parks to gather information, and now we have a survey, and this is really important because we want to hear directly from as many residents as possible about what matters to them when it comes to restroom access. And the survey asks questions about safety and condition and signage, whether the absence or presence of a restroom affects their decision to visit a park, questions like how far you would go to access a restroom. As of yesterday, and I think this is pretty extraordinary because the word really got out on this restroom study, as of yesterday we had over 1,000 responses. It closes on April 19th, so we're hoping to get many more responses to help inform this study. And then we're also going to have additional engagement events in the spring as well. So a couple of years ago, our partners at Moore, which, as you know, is the Mid-Atlantic Off-Road Enthusiasts, they're a mountain bike group that we work very closely with. Oh, and by the way, I should say that they came out in force to support the parks budget at the recent council CIP hearings. We were very appreciative of that. They applied for and received a $40,000 recreational trails program grant that was designed to or intended to fund materials to build boardwalks along a specific section of the Northwest Branch Trail. So in December, our trail crew, with these funds, we purchased the lumber, and then in December, our trail crew constructed 30 different 10-foot long boardwalk segments that they then installed in the park. So we are grateful for their work and for our partnership with Moore. You may have noticed that a couple of weeks ago, we had a very, very, very bad storm. It wasn't just the snow. As you all know, it was the kind of precipitation that we received that just really hardened into essentially like glaciers everywhere, very difficult to deal with. This time, Todd Holmes was our snow commander, and the Deputy Director for Operations, Gary Burnett, had taken himself off to Costa Rica to have a wonderful vacation, which was very well-deserved. But in his stead, Joe Furikob, who is our Southern Region Division Chief, was acting Deputy Director, and together they managed our snow response. You can see here just a couple photographs showing the effort that went into this. You know, we have all kinds of tools for dealing with this. We had staff working around the clock for a couple of days. And then recently I attended a council briefing to update the council on our snow removal operations along with DOT and MCPS. So we are grateful for their efforts, and I, for one, am hoping we don't get any more storms like this for quite a while. We are working with the Montgomery Parks Foundation to pilot something new. It's sponsorship packages for events in parks. You can see there some of the events for which groups and individuals, anybody who wants to make a contribution to help sponsor one of these events. The idea is, of course, to raise more money for parks, and I think this will also raise the profile of the Parks Foundation, so we're grateful for their partnership and we're excited about this pilot. And then finally, on January 14th, we held our most recent service awards. You can see there are 77 happy Parks employees celebrating milestones of 5, 10, 15, 20, and 25 years of service. Because, of course, everything we do depends on the hard work of our employees, and we are grateful to them. So thank you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it, and congratulations, and thank you for all those volunteers that we need them so much, and we are grateful for all their hard work. Do any other questions or comments from the board?
Just, yeah, please send our appreciation to Weed Warriors. You know, that's a very important work, and the time and the work that they do as a volunteer is amazing, and we truly appreciate. And I know that how they call them that killer, the killer weeds that they actually kill. And this was very interesting to see. Thank you for sharing it with us. Also, I really, really support and appreciate the survey for the bathroom study. That's extremely important. And It's just so difficult that people that they go use the park and there is no bathroom because people want to go there, drink, if it is hot summer or any time, and you want to stay there for 2-3 hours. And if you have children or other people that they need to use the bathroom frequently, they have to leave. And sometimes they don't even go to park because of that. So I truly support it, and I'm hoping that, I do not know if you have included in the CIP program for that, but you have my full support for that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We'll go now to the semi-annual outline to prep for what we'll be doing, presenting to the council in the next month.
Good morning, Board. For the record, Jason Sartori, Planning Department Director. So I'm happy to start this conversation. As you know, we give our semi-annual presentation to the council twice a year, and we're scheduled on March 10th to give our spring semi-annual. And so we'll start with some opening remarks from the chair, and then I'll have some remarks, and then we'll turn to Parks. And so I'll just real quickly summarize what we plan to discuss from the planning perspective. I really want this presentation to be an opportunity for the council members to see the planning department and our staff in ways that they don't typically see. So we're before them a lot of times for zoning text amendments or for master plans, but they don't see the work and the effort that we put in with regard to development review or our inspections out in the fields, or the work that Brian Crane does with regard to burial sites. And so we're going to try to show images of a life in the day of a Montgomery County planner. And part of it is to demonstrate that we do so much more than what they see in front of them on a regular basis. So that, where we talk about a planning staff highlight, that is really what that's going to be. We're then going to give a kind of a quick update on where things are with our strategic plan, largely to be able to remind them that we've got it and that there are a lot of things in there that we're trying to accomplish. I will just note generally that we are working on trying to pull together a status update on all of that so that we can report back to you on that too sometime soon. Then we always like to take time in our spring semi-annual to give an update on the development activity from the prior calendar year. So we'll show them some graphs, some numbers that highlight just the volume of development that we've reviewed, and with that, all the different types of applications, whether it's a water quality protection, or it's forest conservation, or a sketch plan, site plan, preliminary plan, and also the work that our HP team does with the Historic Preservation Commission, so any HOPs and tax credit applications as well. Then we'll give a quick update on the Community Planning Academy. That has been something that's been quite a success story for us, and also something that the council's been very interested in. And then we'll conclude with an update on our master plans. So a lot of these are ones that well, obviously, they'll all go through the board, but some have already, obviously, Clarksburg's not on this list here, but they'll be quite aware because Clarksburg will be coming before the full council around that time. And the one thing that we will not be doing specifically that's listed here is this tracking on our FY26 funds for master plan support. What I've previously indicated to the council is that we're actually going to give an update in the fall semi-annual on how we spent the prior fiscal year's master plan support funding, just to show them, because they changed the way we get that funding. It's not specific to individual master plans, it's general, and so we've told them that we'll report out each year on how we've actually spent that money. And so I'd rather do that at the conclusion of the fiscal year.
Can I just ask a question?
Absolutely.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
I was wondering that this is in early March. I forgot the date.
March 10th.
March 10th. So it's right before the budget hearing, correct?
Well, so the county executive's recommended budget will come out that week, at the end of that week. So the 15th of March is when he releases it. So we won't yet know what our budget is. or what our recommended budget is from the county executive.
Okay, but I do not know if there are some highlight of things that you feel very strongly that you want to, just an idea, because that's the time you can pitch in front of everybody. So.
So that is a wonderful idea, and it's something that we've actually done in the last couple of years, but where we've been asked to focus a little bit more on the work that we're doing as opposed to the budget request, because we will get an opportunity in the coming weeks afterwards to focus on that.
Okay, got it.
Sounds great. I had one tiny little thought about development activity and kind of the tracking of applications that you mentioned, summarizing for them. I'm wondering, did you all talk about also summarizing like plan amendments that came in? Because as we've talked about with like related to larger market issues, how we've seen so many amendments come in going from more density to less density or from multifamily apartments to townhomes. And I don't want to sort of assign any kind of value judgment on that, but I think it might be interesting for them to have more transparency on that trend that we're seeing.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. We will include those in the summary of the counts. And what I'd like to do is dig a little deeper and explain what some of those numbers mean. And so when we see that count of the number of amendments that have come through, maybe that will give me an opportunity there to dig in and say, most of these amendments involved X, Y, or Z. The other thing I'm contemplating adding in here is, kind of some I mean, it's going to sound kind of boring, but some screenshots of our regulatory staff reports to highlight the different elements of it. I mean, you see these on a weekly basis, and they're not insignificant. Some of them are really, really lengthy because we have to go into so many different analyses, pull together so much stuff from different agencies, and all of that goes in. So I do want, whenever I can, to try to not just show the numbers, but go a little bit deeper and say, here's what is behind these numbers, with the amendments, but also the amount of effort that it involves.
And to that point, and to your point, I think that's actually, I mean, I find them fascinating, although I don't know if anybody else would. But I think it is important because so many of the times when we're requested to do things or we're asked about things with the site plan, it's in the staff report. Like the stormwater management, the parks, the open space, all of the stuff that we're being asked about. And I don't think it's as well known how deep and detailed those staff reports are for every site plan that we've done, every sketch plan, all of that is in there. I think it's worthwhile to go through that. And when we talk about like trees and stuff, we have a very extensive way of dealing with tree removal if necessary for a site plan, and it's that's built in and baked in. We have a lot of these things that we do that address the questions that people ostensibly ask us when they're here, and I think it's worthwhile going through some of that. I think it's a really good idea.
And just building off that as well, later today we're obviously going to talk about potential ZTA to broaden expedited reviews. To, I think we've seen maybe one so far, but, this is intended to get more than one, obviously. So the amount of work that any application requires is enormous, but expediting it, so yeah, I think these things all sort of
really important
kind of align and kind of lead to the same conclusion, which is, it's important to fund these efforts if we want the results that council wants.
Yeah, and just as a heads up, we anticipate seeing a few more of those commercial to residential reconstruction expedited plans coming through in the next few months, so get ready. Yeah.
All great comments. I like that, interested in seeing the day in the life so that they can see the other pieces of what we do. And so I think that's a great idea. And then maybe, I don't know, in your last point about showing them how much goes into a regulatory plan or whatever, now that we also have to do the climate action piece, and is there a certain way you can have a checklist? This is the before checklist, and this is the, so that you can also show the amount of how it's evolved, and therefore you have to do more work. But all great. We look forward to the semi-annual coming up, and Director Figueredo, you have some items here.
Yes. Every time we do a semi-annual report to the council, it's an opportunity to share with the council all the work we did for the last 6 months. And as Director Sartori said, the council doesn't have the same day-to-day visibility into our work as the planning board, for example. So whether it's explicit or, I would say it's implicit in every time we're in front of the council, we are, by sharing with them the work we do, I hope making the case for why it's important and, of course, why we need funding to continue doing it. So the theme for parks this time, the big picture theme for us is to share with the council how engagement figures so importantly into all the work we do. So you can see here that there's a list of topics. It's longer than what you can see just on this page that's on the screen in front of you, but the commonality in all these topics, the restroom survey and the work we're doing around black baseball, our athletic field policy updates that were just recently approved by the board. All of this, we're going to be talking about the engagement work that went into it. And then, of course, we also always spend a little time just updating the council on our progress on important projects that they and their constituents have a natural interest in. So you can see there a list of the projects that we'll be updating them on. And that's basically the rundown of our semi-annual outline, but happy to take any questions about any of these items or suggestions.
The previous page, what was the black baseball?
That's work that we're doing around the history of black baseball, and specifically here, the engagement work that we've done on that.
Oh, that's a history.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I think this is great, and I love focusing on the engagement. But that brought up a question, or not a question as much as maybe just sort of well, yeah, I guess a question. So, but engagement in the past year. So the past year has changed the way a lot of folks want to kind of engage publicly, engage with government of any level, for a variety of reasons, coming from largely just federal policy and related concerns. And I'm wondering if there's anything that we've learned about how we can still effectively engage in this new environment or this changing environment, and understanding the concerns and sensitivities, but still getting the information that we need, the valuable information to make good decisions that speak to concerns that may not be as kind of publicly stated or out there or it may just be harder to find. I know this is a sensitive topic, obviously, but I'm wondering if there's anything that you think is worth sharing about anything we've learned about how to still engage in this environment, or anything you think council will be interested in.
Well, I guess I don't know how much of it I would tie to just the past year. I think that our engagement efforts have been evolving for a little while now. You've probably all heard me say that the old way of doing engagement through a one-and-done public meeting wasn't equitable, and it's just not a great way for us to get information that helps us do our work. So I think what we've moved towards is a little bit more, of course, calibrated to the kind of work that we're doing. We're not going to do the same outreach or engagement or informational work for every type of project that we're doing. So we do try to somewhat formalize the level of engagement, but what we're doing more of is using just a variety of tools so that we can get good information. Because I think the first question you have to ask yourself when you're thinking about engagement, input, outreach, all of those things is, what's the goal? What are you trying to accomplish? Are you trying to inform people? Are you trying to get information that you otherwise don't have? I mean, sometimes you don't know what you don't know until you ask a question. So that's what we're trying to do more of, is ask ourselves, what is the goal of our engagement? And then use a variety of tools to get the information we need, or to share the information that we need to share. And I will tell you, I find that surveys, I mean, we were talking about the restroom surveys are really important and effective, because if done well, they're probably the best way of getting a broadly representative selection of views. I don't know if that helps answer the question at all. Do you have something you want to add?
Yeah, I was just going to add that, with respect to our master plan efforts, we've spent a lot of time in recent years going door to door. Well, that is a little bit harder now in the last year. People don't want to open their door for strangers as much as they may have before. And so I think Director Figueredo is correct in that using a variety of methods, but for us, I think a lot of that is going to be the online tools, the digital outreaches, the online surveys. You can reach people without them having to, open their door for you and welcome you into their homes.
Correct, yes, thank you for adding that. That's very important.
Any other questions or comments? And these are great ideas, I mean, for their presentation. So thank you so much. Maybe, I don't know how we could get it in there, if there are opportunities to ask them, or they can figure out how could they help? How could they help further these goals other than just money? Other than, I mean, maybe it's around helping us with our engagement efforts. Maybe it's, and I know they have
Absolutely.
I see many of them have their monthly or their,
Yes, they're newsletters, and we've actually had several of them, I believe, share the restroom survey, and I think that's part of why we've gotten so many responses. And they've made that offer before, that we should, use them to help get the word out on things, and I think they're happy to do that. And we're of course more than willing to to piggyback on their own outreach.
Great, thank you. So we are finished with this item, and we're going to take a 2-minute break and then start with our next item, item 13, legislative update. Thank you. Good morning and welcome back. We're on item number 13, legislative update. This morning, we have our General Counsel, Deborah Borden, and Jordan Balcom-Colbert presenting these items to us. Welcome.
Thank you, and good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the Planning Board. I'm Deborah Borden, for the record, General Counsel for the Commission. I have with me Jordan Balcom-Colbert. We'll get right to the bills for you. We're going to start with Senate Bill 688. And brief description of this bill is that it requires the Department of the Environment to prioritize certain practices when carrying out duties related to stormwater management. It establishes restrictions on the use of stream or floodplain restoration projects to satisfy compensatory mitigation, permit, or total maximum daily load requirements. It establishes requirements for stormwater management plans that include stream-related projects. So the Parks Department is very interested in this bill. I should point out, the Montgomery Parks Department carries its own MS4 permit. That is a stormwater management related permit that allows discharge into streams. Generally, this occurs when you have development or when you have work being done on streams in order to preserve them. So our Montgomery Parks personnel who deal with the MS4 permits and these projects are very concerned about certain aspects of this bill. The Prince George's Parks Department, while this impacts them, they do not carry their own MS4 permit. The county does in Prince George's County. So the Prince George's Parks, they're really just looking at basically cost and delay for their projects and whether this would impact. And they do think that it would impact their projects in terms of additional cost, 10, maybe 15% additional cost, and certainly additional time. But it's really Montgomery Parks that has most of the angst with this bill. And so if they're in the room or online, perhaps they might want to weigh in on this.
Yes, someone's coming up right now. Thank you.
Okay.
Good morning. For the record, Matt Harper, Natural Resources Manager for Montgomery Parks. We just wanted to flag this bill for everyone this morning. What is being proposed here would severely limit our management of our Stream Valley Park system. I would say we are affected, but probably disproportionately affected in the county because of our land ownership and our stewardship responsibilities for the stream valleys. This bill is attempting to limit how we manage our stream valleys and sort of take away one of our primary tools for managing those untreated stormwater discharges that end up on parkland. So, we are looking to maintain our full and complete toolbox as we make decisions to appropriately steward these resources. So just to sort of put in context, I would say that for our MS4 permit, the last one that we received, about 60% of what we did to meet the 20% retrofit goal that we were given was done through stream restoration and outfall restoration projects.
So could you go over again, just so I'm real clear, what does this take away?
Yeah.
Hi, Erin McCardle. I'm an engineer with Parks, for the record, in the Park Development Division. Yeah, so specifically this goal, or this bill, has a few different goals, and part of that is targeting the funding that funds many stream restoration projects. I'd say the vast majority, if almost all, stream restoration projects throughout the state, both ones that Parks implements, as well as projects that other folks come onto parkland to implement for maybe compensatory mitigation or TMDL purposes. And we appreciate those projects as well as the projects out of our own capital improvements program. those all feed into the restoration of our stream valleys, and we feel those are very important. As Matt was saying, in terms of our own MS4 program, we use a variety of tools to meet our implementation goals, but stream restoration is an important one and also a very cost-effective one, both in the initial capital costs as well as the fact that stream restoration projects don't have following operational budget burdens in terms of maintenance that are needed for, say, traditional stormwater management facilities, which is if we were limited in our ability to implement stream restoration projects under our MS4 program, would all have to be replaced with projects that then have not only higher initial capital costs, as well as additional operational burdens following. Other than trying to take away the funding for stream restoration projects, this bill, the wording gets very kind of confusing near the end of the bill when it's talking about the review of stormwater management plans, but essentially any stream restoration project that we implement is a development project, and that we have an erosion and sediment control plan that goes through county review, and the first step of that is the stormwater concept. So what this is addressing is during our stormwater concept review, the way we're interpreting this bill, the county would then be tasked with reviewing essentially the merits of our stream restoration. So if we were to be able to somehow find funding with all of the funding that they're trying to cut off on this bill to move forward with the stream restoration project, then there would be additional review and justification needed for that project, including an alternatives analysis, and then they have a definition here of infeasible. So if in your alternatives analysis you said a project was infeasible either due to costs or due to property ownership, those are not considered to be and make a project infeasible per this bill. So we're worried that even if we were to find funding for a project, it wouldn't be able to move forward. So they're hitting it dually there.
I can attest that the stream restoration project is one of the most successful projects that Parks has. It has been proven in many aspects. And do you know, and it's really a pity if we take that success or even harm it in any shape and form. So I don't understand, do you know what is the reason behind this bill? Why is this bill is doing something that is so successful?
So we've seen bills similar to this over the last couple of years. There's a contingent in Montgomery County in particular, particularly vocal in Montgomery County, that is against stream restoration based on what they perceive as impacts to stream valleys as a result of them. And Parks has said many, many times that we do stream restorations in a very thoughtful and meaningful way, that our site selection and analysis is very thorough, and only the worst of the worst streams, would justify the work. And when we do the work, we implement a number of protections that ensure that we're not unnecessarily impacting the terrestrial resources adjacent and improving habitat and water quality, in the end.
What kind of impact are they talking about?
Well, when you do stream restoration, you do have heavy equipment down in the stream valley, and you're changing the
talking
flow
about
path.
removing trees and bringing the,
So I think that's
the fight,
the main,
tree
I think that's
versus.
the main driver, is this perceived impact, and that's a short-term immediate impact. We're doing this, we're obviously not going anywhere. So when we do these, we expect to see these improvements down the line, and this is a long-term game for us when we do this. So I think the goal of this is to focus, all of this funding on upstream stormwater management practices and eliminate the stream restoration down in the receiving waters.
Okay.
So we have two options here. It sounds like this is not good for Montgomery Parks. We could either do it informational and just say how it would hurt, or how we would need to change, so we would
Chair.
for us, or we can just oppose it, so.
May
yeah,
I?
yeah,
I-
What would you recommend?
I would recommend that the planning board oppose this
Okay.
bill.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right, and so if we did, do we also add, our general counsel, do we add reasons why we're opposing?
Well, we do, yeah, we've already drafted, a statement that really does sound like an opposition. If we had changed it to an informational, we may have had to rework the language a bit. But it's already drafted as an opposition to the
okay,
bill.
great.
So I think we're good.
Okay,
Mhm.
where the consensus is to oppose it, and it's, I just always want to have the reasons why, so people know why, okay?
Do we need to make a motion
Yeah.
to oppose?
Yes.
Then we okay.
Yes, please.
Yeah, just to share all the comments with Commissioner Pettawee, I think the stream restoration is an incredibly good project and something that's addressing, longstanding issues that we've had with poor stream management. So, yeah, I'll move to oppose this bill.
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, the ayes have it, 5-0. Let's go to the next one, please.
Thank you. Okay, next bill is Senate Bill 829. And brief description of the bill. This requires counties to allow this is another housing bill. It requires counties to allow multifamily developments and mixed-use developments as a permitted use, as in, permitted by right on certain parcels or lots. It prohibits certain counties from imposing restrictions, requirements, or limitations on these developments. It also authorizes counties to require a development to have a certain percentage of available floor space dedicated to retail use. So in essence, the bill, first of all, only applies to counties that have at least 150,000 in population. So it exempts the smaller counties in the state. It's allowing, frankly, potentially large scale, because there is no limit on the scale or the amount of mixed use or multifamily development on property that isn't necessarily zoned for it and isn't necessarily designed for it. So it allows these developments to go on as long as it has either public or private water and sewer systems. So that's our first area of concern, because that would seem to include septic, well and septic. A private system is well and septic. And generally speaking, we don't want to see mixed use or multifamily developments on well and septic. We want them to be on public water and sewer. So that would be a really different thing to do from a planning perspective. The other things in the bill that we've identified, it would allow multifamily and mixed use on land zoned for recreation. So the issue is, it seems to be saying that if we have open land that is for recreation or commercial zoning, or that has recreational or commercial zoning, and there's an opportunity to put housing on it, we should be able to put housing on it. That might sound good on paper, but there are real world, consequences to that not everyone is going to be terribly happy about. So we have some comments here. I see Director Sartori may like to speak to this a bit. I do want to mention before Director Sartori starts is that the bill kind of has two parts to it. The first part is talking about how, in spite of the zoning, you can place residential or mixed use on land that is zoned for commercial or recreational use. And then the second part of the bill talks about if you have covenants on the land. If you're a property owner, you have covenants, whether it's HOA covenants or other restricted covenants that wouldn't allow you to put residential on that property, that you can disregard the covenants. The covenants would have no impact. And so this is a version of a bill that we saw last year and the year before, saying that regardless of the covenants, including HOA covenants, you can put residential in a place, in certain places where you normally couldn't. So this is a problem for a place like, for instance, a golf course community. If a community was built around a golf course, the golf course generally will have an open space covenant on it, so that if the golf course goes out of business and gets sold to, say, an investor, the investor can't just build houses on it because it's a part of a community, a plan of development that generally speaking was planned for that open space. And because of that open space in the middle of it, generally they got more density, or they got to do other things, or they had to do, or they were allowed to do things that they wouldn't have generally in that zone. Maybe the houses are closer together, or whatever the case may be. That was something that was done at the time that the community was planned and then built. So, this would allow, someone to come in, buy up the golf course and then build housing on it and build apartments. So instead of looking at a golf course, these folks are now going to be looking at apartments. That's a huge and sort of a wrenching thing to do. And so that would be, really concerning to a lot of communities. And this is particularly impactful in Prince George's County, because we actually had this happen in Prince George's County. We had a golf course go out of business. The golf course got sold, or the land got sold, and the investor wanted to come in and build housing, in spite of the open space covenant that was on the land.
Okay.
And so I'll stop there and see if Director Sartori wants to.
Sure, just a
Go
few
ahead.
words. I do think that recreational zoning piece is more of an issue on the Prince George's side. We don't have recreational zoning. For example, our golf courses are typically zoned R60 or R90 or whatever, so I did want to highlight that I think in general, this is pretty consistent with a lot of the things that we've talked about. The intent really is to try to create more opportunities for smaller scale mixed use or multifamily development in our single-family zones. So it's consistent with a lot of the things we've talked about through attainable housing and other initiatives. The thing, though, that is concerning to us is that there is no limit on the scale. So a 5-unit apartment over, some retail would apply to this, as would a 600-unit multifamily building in our downtown areas. So the concern there is that it would circumvent because this would be by right, you would go directly to DPS to be able to build a 600-unit apartment building without the coordinated agency review process that we have. That is really important to make sure that we are meeting and that the application is meeting all of our public health, safety, and planning-related goals and interests. But the big part for me, too, on that is that it avoids, the conversations we have around public benefits. And so I think the big thing would be to set some sort of limit to say that this is really focused on the middle housing that we're trying to achieve, not intended to make by right these larger scale projects.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, to a certain extent, yeah, the recreational zoning is not one that we have, and honestly, I don't mean to be flippant about it, but the transfer of a golf course to housing is a feature for me, not a bug. So, I have trouble finding a great deal of, it's not open space, really, it shouldn't be qualified as open space. It's environmentally detrimental, it's not accessible to the public. I find, homeowner association covenants, we've talked about that a number of times with the things. I don't find that level of covenant to be particularly concerning. I do agree on the water and sewer and public water and sewer we don't want, but we have regulations in place which would stop that for volume and quality if it was a larger scale, but it's not explicit in the bill, and I understand that it's not explicit in the bill. I think it's worth on a broader note, and I understand the density limit is the highest level that we have in our county. there's a difference between a CRT zone sitting in, a large-scale CRT density and something, a CR density and something like CRN or something like that. Given that it's a broad state-based bill, it's going to be hard to identify the differences in zoning. I think that that's a reasonable thing to put in an informational or a support with amendment piece of it. I do want to say that just over the few years that I've been here and on the board, and every time that we go to legislative session, we see this bill or a bill like this or more housing bills, and it's been going up and up and up and up and up and up and up over the time that I've been here. We need to address and acknowledge that. And I think if we as a board I think it's worth pushing and going that something's got to give at some point. And I think this is reasonable, with some amendments and some informational to address these issues. But we're gonna come to a point where we're seeing more attention on housing. We're seeing more focus on it over the years. Something's got to give, and we need to accept that we are going to have to address some of those issues long term.
So can I just say one? So I'm open to at least say informational with some with our concerns. When I first read this, I just didn't quite understand. Thank you, Ms. Borton and Director Sartori, for understanding it better than I, because I was wondering what's the purpose. And I didn't quite understand all the pieces there, so thank you for that. But yes, we do want to emphasize more middle, attainable, smaller scale, and so if we can put in pieces like that, this is what we like about this, or this is what, but I would be accepting of some informational approval or something, informational comments on here, not deny.
Well, we do have a suggestion that they target these proposals to particular geographies, maybe around transit areas, maybe some other kind of targeting, and that they, consider just honing in as opposed to having this sort of blanket approach. It's the blanket approach with zoning that generally results in unintended consequences. So we prefer to see something more targeted, a little bit more, reasonable in terms of density, in terms of intensity of what they would be willing to allow, because every single piece of property is very different in terms of what is surrounding it. And so some flexibility there, I think, would make us all feel a bit better about this effort.
I think that I like to have something in here. I totally support, what Deborah just talked about, and also the concern that, Director Sartori has. I do support middle-income housing. I do support to have, more availability to build more of specifically the smaller, duplexes, triplexes, 3 or 4 units. But when you have a blanket approach like this, it's a complete chaos. I don't understand that how this bill comes without really thinking what are the consequences to everything else. Let me just finish. In my opinion, it's a chaos. I do support what Deborah just discussed, that at least we put it geographically in the areas that they have all the requirements that we set forward, adequate public facilities or something. Jason, looks like you want to say something.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify one thing, that this is focused in some way. It says on parcel zone for recreational, again, that doesn't apply here, or commercial use. So this would not apply in our R60, R90, or 200 zones. It would apply in our CR zones. We're asking for a little bit of clarity. Would this apply in our EOF, our employment zone, our neighborhood retail, general retail? So those are not really spread throughout the county. I mean, we have those in concentrated places typically around our activity centers.
Okay,
the
got
That's what
CR
I
zones.
was-
So,
Got
yeah.
it, okay.
That was what
okay.
I was gonna say,
That's,
is-
that helps a lot.
So let's,
It's only commercial specific, and we already list commercial specific. This isn't gonna be, and I mean, I understand from the Prince George's County side, they have a recreational, but this doesn't really apply to any golf course or anything within Montgomery County, because they're not zoned commercial, so it doesn't apply to there. I think that the intent of the bill, allowing for multifamily by right in any commercial zone, is a perfectly reasonable thing to do. I think that if we were to sort of do what we've done before, which is go to MC Atlas and try to identify plots that have only septic and are also zoned commercial, I don't think we have any of them. We may have, I mean, I'm sure that given the size of the county, there's probably one somewhere up in like Potomac or something. But like this is, I think, focused, and it is relatively narrowly defined given what we've proposed in the past, and it's focused on commercial use. As long as the details are, as long as we work out, I think, the details on like, public water and sewer, I think that the density doesn't concern me, and then it's not, we're one commission, and PG's got their concerns with recreational zoning. But like, I'm not that concerned in a practical sense because we're already set up for these. It's just, by right, we're going to have to address these things.
okay, so why don't you have Vice Chair Linden, and let's wrap this up here, okay?
Yeah, thanks. I think the spirit of this is pretty spot on, but I do appreciate kind of the devil's in the details in a lot of the ways that you mentioned. And to me, when I read through this, the obvious benefit, of course, is in addition to just housing generally and more opportunities for housing, whether that's, I have a couple questions about if this is truly by right. I think there's points of clarification that are needed, but set that aside for a second. But another big benefit here is just bringing housing closer to commercial amenities. If I can't imagine that an entire kind of commercial strip will get redeveloped. So what this would practically mean is often a little bit of infill housing, whether that's kind of moderate scale or even higher rise scale, around other commercial retail properties, and that's a real win, I think, for residents who will live there. It's a win for the commercial and retail properties who have more customers nearby. It's more walkable. It's sort of kind of it gets in the direction of, I think, some of the planning principles that. It doesn't address all of them, but it's sort of kind of from a land use perspective, I think is kind of heading in that direction, which is positive. But yeah, to me, a big point of clarification is, do our CR zones even qualify as commercial? Does it need to be explicitly, exclusively commercial? Can it be a combination of? Can it be a mixed use zone like our CR zones currently are? I know this is already on your mind, and it's kind of it's noted in the informational statement right now. So that's a question, just applicability to things that are kind of in our county right now, and related to that, how this intersects with optional method. And for example, if you look at the bill language on page 5, permitted use blah 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 means blah 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 blah. And then it gets to any other discretionary zoning action. So would our optional method, which is where we get the public benefits, obviously, and it's where we go from like very low density to higher density in exchange for public benefits, is that a discretionary zoning action? I suspect it probably is, but we could certainly use clarification around that. And to the extent that we do get a lot of public benefits from that. Obviously, that is a cost, and this bill is probably trying to reduce cost in that way. That's something that we value. We just went through an enormous effort to revise our zoning, our incentive zoning, or to better align it with different needs in different areas. So clarification there about whether that would basically completely preempt optional method. Is there a way to still kind of use something that I think has been pretty valuable in a lot of ways? So yeah, similarly, I'm not worried about the sewer and septic hookup, at least here. I can't imagine that there's many instances where commercial would not be at least within the envelope, if not actually hooked up currently today. And when it comes to the HOA, or when it comes to the covenant piece, you know, I acknowledge that we're one commission, and I acknowledge that there's probably more concerns related to this on the Prince George's side. Yeah, but I agree with Commissioner Hedrick. I think from my perspective, you know, many of these covenants remain exclusionary, and I don't have an issue with kind of using this bill to try to generate more housing opportunities in ways that get around, you know, in often agreements and covenants that were set up to exclude people. And I think that that's generally a good thing. Again, devil's in the details, but I support that in principle, and I trust you all that the comments and clarification items you submit will kind of try to get at the heart of making this workable.
Okay, so you've taken all this in, Ms. Borden, and one of the things, though, at the end of the day, if it's truly commercial zones, even if it's CR zone, I doubt you'll ever get any small-scale development because of the land value. You know, like if it's normally those CR zones are, you know, it's signaling a higher density areas, and but they may. So let's what I'm hearing is some approval with conditions, sort of kind of thing. Is that what I'm? Yes, support with some amendments. Do you?
I don't support it.
Okay,
I don't know if I support it either, because I'm still not sure. I hear that it's just commercial. So what about if it is CR? Do we know that?
But we were going to put a comment on, and that's an amendment that it would have to be. Do we?
Well, we have, we have a comment that asks them to clarify what commercial means.
Yeah.
You know, in terms of, you know, because they have to make it so that the definition is consistent across the state. So they're going to need to expound on what that means.
I'd suggest information right now, more lean toward that.
But you can say, what does define what is commercial without saying what you, if you want to support it, you support it because of X. So, you know what I'm saying? So what is define commercial, or define commercial, and if we're moving, it should also include this. You know what I'm saying? What does define commercial mean? If they say commercial is commercial, I mean, then is there a point where you're like, this doesn't work for us?
Yeah. Well, it's possible that the clarification might make it, you know, to various degrees, depending upon how the C and the R kind of calibrated, you know, to varying degrees, like we already allow this in our CR zones, at least. And so I guess, you know, to me, a question, it's more a clarification question for like the other zone, like neighborhood retail and the, you know, and to the extent, and honestly, to me, it's like if neighborhood retail potentially could qualify, you know, we're talking about in a lot of instances, old, you know, developments from the 50s, 60s, 70s with large surface parking lots that we've talked about in various other contexts that could be interesting for development into housing. Obviously, you know, I think neighborhood, I'm out of my depth with the details, but it's like there's some residential limit currently.
30%.
30%, so this would obviously, you know, get beyond that. There's been talk, I think, you know, there was maybe a ZTA approach a year or two ago to try to get into this.
It was removed, then it was put back in.
And it was put back in.
Yes.
So this is not out of line with things that we have talked about, that council has considered, at
But
least from
it's
a
going to
neighborhood
be
retail
by
standpoint.
right. This is the problem. I have issues that it is by right. I have no problem with what Commissioner Linden is saying, but I do have problem. That's why I say create chaos. And, you know, it's perfectly fine if they bring it and then to say that if you have adequate public facilities, adequate everything else, and then go by right, none of those would be, you know, evaluated. And that's what create issues, you know.
Yeah, I might recommend that this be informational because we do have a lot in there with questions seeking clarity, and We could even try to reach out. The sponsor is Senator Waldstreicher, who is here in Montgomery County. So we can reach out to his office and see if we can have a conversation. And obviously, there are a lot of things in here that were concerns for Prince George's County. We'll focus on the ones that we've discussed and, that we've raised.
That's a great recommendation. Okay.
Yeah, I agree with that, yeah.
I mean, I still support, but I think that, I mean, practically speaking, this is what we've been moving toward and what we've proposed in different situations. And like, by right and permit does not eliminate the requirements that we have for these developments. And I think that,
How is that? How is that?
They still have to meet. I would let,
Yeah, why don't we, because we're going to go for information, and we're going to go for information. With those questions, you'll come back to us, with
Yes.
where he stands.
Hopefully we'll come back to you with revisions.
Okay, yeah, because I'm comfortable with informational at this stage if we feel like we'll get another crack at the, whatever that, metaphor is. Another bite at the apple, that's what I was thinking of.
Is that correct, Ms. Borden? We could get another bite at the
I
apple.
would think so. Senator Waldstreicher is very helpful, has been very helpful to us in the past, and I'm sure he will be at least open to hearing our concerns.
Okay.
Yes.
If you guys okay? Okay. Why don't we next, please.
Okay. House Bill 1296. Just get my cheat sheet up. Okay, this bill, let's see, Safe School Routes Reports. This is another bill that has really two parts to it. So the bill requires most developers of projects with 5 or more residential dwelling units to prepare and submit a Safe School Routes report as part of a preliminary plan or site plan application. The report has to document existing pedestrian, bicycle infrastructure, identify proposed safe routes to public schools within the applicable attendance boundary, assess gaps or hazards, and describe measures to address those gaps or hazards. So the report is the first part of the bill. The second part of the bill would allow the local jurisdictions to withhold preliminary plan or site plan approval if the Safe School Routes report is not approved by both the Planning Board and the Board of Ed. That is a new one. And that, it would seem to me, is the part of the bill that has generated the most comments from the planning departments. So I'll stop there. I know they want to say something about this bill to you, and I think they want to sort of expand on what their concerns are.
Can I just ask a question? Is this for the developments that are close to a school that people may be walking?
Yeah.
Do they have that
It's
provision?
for any project, any development within the identified walk zone of a school.
Okay, so that's the part.
Yeah.
Okay.
So one thing I will point out is that for our high schools, MCPS identifies a walk zone that can be as far as 2 miles from the site of the high school. So potentially right. And so what the report is required, that would be required of the applicant, is for them to identify the safe route to school from their site and any of the deficiencies that might exist with regard to pedestrian or bicycle safety along those routes. So, you're potentially looking at a 2-mile distance, which is well beyond what we would expect for our adequate public facilities piece.
Yeah.
So the key things, and Mr. Glazer can add if I miss anything here, but the key things, one, is not only does the Board of Ed need to approve that report, but they also need to sign off on the completion of anything that was agreed to be mitigated. And that seems inappropriate, one. And then two, we would want to make sure that we can keep this still within the framework of our adequate public facilities policy. We believe we have a pretty good policy that is very much focused on pedestrian and bicycle improvements. And at the same time, we've implemented the proportionality piece of ours to ensure that what we ask of a developer is appropriate for their project. And so anything that would be required of this, we would want to still be subject to our expectations along those regards.
Are you have anything else to add? If nothing else, we don't have a lot of time, but a couple more comments you may have, but it seems like your point is this is when we're doing informational or you're
Oh,
opposed?
yeah.
Opposed.
Oppose, yeah.
I thought I saw,
Well,
Well-
our idea was that we could do this informational since the first part of the bill is serviceable. We could work with the first part of the bill that requires a report. We do think the 5 units is a little low, but we could work with that, and hopefully get some amendments to that part of the bill. It's the second part of the bill that's really got us scratching our heads.
Yeah.
So we thought that informational could be a possibility, but obviously it's up to you.
Oh, can I add something? I just think if we could do informational, that would be my recommendation because we have a meeting with the sponsor on Friday. She might be willing to work with us, so I wouldn't want to go into the meeting saying we opposed your bill and, just kind of give it some time.
That's a fair point. I personally, right now, I think that this is safe routes to school, hugely important, needed. We don't fund it enough. We need more safe routes to school almost everywhere.
Yeah.
And I don't feel like this is the way to actually improve the situation for reasons that were mentioned. Developers, it's adding this sort of layer on top of what already exists in many parts of the state, and it may be done in an inconsistent way. And but it's also sort of inappropriate to ask developers to sort of build potentially to such a broad envelope around where their site is and add all those costs. I mean, my personal preference would just be to adequately fund safe routes to school through the various DOTs and in coordination with school boards, kind of using the planning background that I think our approach in this county is actually quite good, as mentioned, but you also have to acknowledge that what we do here is probably not the same elsewhere around the state. Is there value that this bill can add for other communities that may not have the sort of deep and kind of integrative background to this planning from a safe routes to school standpoint, kind of elsewhere? And maybe the answer is yes. I personally don't feel like asking the developer or applicants to take on this level of analysis and mitigation, requiring approval from both planning and schools. And schools, I don't think, has the background to sort of make that approval. I don't feel like that's appropriate, and I'm not totally sure how to kind of change the bill in a way that would change my view that this isn't really this isn't something that we should make a privately led thing. This inherently, safe routes to school is inherently, should be publicly driven, publicly funded. If we want to fund more of it through statewide legislation, let's get on that. Like, I totally support. 100%. We have safe routes to school studies for almost every, or plan to be around every school in this county. I am curious to know, again, how other counties treat this issue, or if there's statewide requirements for state routes to school. So this is, to me, this is an area I think of I don't have as much information. So maybe one of the questions back to the bill author is like, what does exist throughout the state currently from a safe routes to school standpoint? What are statewide requirements in place currently? But yeah, I just don't like the private approach to this, and I think it's going to add costs and not get a whole lot of value in return.
Yep, here's my thing. I agree with all those comments. I think it's going to add, it's more bureaucracy. It will result in less, taking longer. People want, the governor and everyone wants housing to happen faster, right? What's impeding construction? What's competing economic development? And so, but if you can tell the sponsor, you can meet with her, tell her our concerns, just why we think, and also, we wouldn't want to have a carve out, but we want to solve the problem, not just have a carve out for our process, but with some of the comments the Vice Chair had, but I mean, I'm okay with the information but strongly note that these are our main concerns, and how does she get around those concerns?
Okay.
We can also check in with Mako to see, because they tend to compile comments and concerns from across the state on these types of bills. So we'll check in with them as well to see what their position is going to be, and also if they have particular information from other parts of the state as to how they deal with this sort of situation right now. And we can bring that
yeah.
back to you after we
But-
get our meeting.
I believe that this bill is a good example of stopping a small development, because 5 houses up to 15, 20 is a small development. And requiring them something on top of other requirements, as Commissioner Linden and also Chairperson said, it's going to add more burden, and it definitely is going to stop. If we want to have more of those duplexes, triplexes, and smaller contractors to come in, this is a good example to push it out. And we just had a bill, I think it was last week, for safe schools, that was something that we supported, I think, with amendment, and that made sense. We had to do some amendments to it, but that sort of put it on the government to do additional things that, especially if it's outside the limit of the project, to do. If we're going to get another shot on this, then I'm fine to send it informational, and I totally understand that you have a meeting Friday and you want to go with the positive thing. But I would like to have another, if it's going to be another shot, because the way that it is written right now, I don't think is good for our projects, our development, and everything else in the Montgomery County.
Understood.
Okay, are you some clarity around that? Great. Yep, informational, but with a lot of concerns and comments, and so you can get back with us. Okay, let's do the next one, please.
I
You want me
think
to
that,
I can
yeah,
take
I
this
think
one.
Director Sartori
Sure.
has more information about this one.
Actually, so I promised that I would bring this through you in 3 minutes. I'm going to try for 2. So every year we present to the county house delegation, and we did so on January 23rd. I spent a good amount of that presentation. I think I shared some of it with you previously, talking about some of the housing trends we see. Following that, as part of that, I was asked whether or not we would support getting assistance from the state to continue our efforts with regard to our housing analyses and research. And I said, of course we would welcome support from the state in that regard. And so this bill is kind of a follow-up to this. This would create, would ask DHCD, the Department of Housing and Community Development, to do a study taking a look at affordability and availability of housing in Montgomery County and trying to help identify the barriers to production here. It would require them to produce 3 reports, 2 interim ones, and 1 final report over the course of the next 2.5 years. The point of those reports, though, is to share their findings and make recommendations. And so we are supportive of this. My understanding is that DHCD is also supportive of this, and so we hope that we could just support it as is.
This feels so good, yeah, right? It's like this, studies like this are, they're never not helpful, I guess. But is this different than our current housing needs assessment that we're going through right now? Is it looking at different things? Is it potentially, yeah?
I think it will actually complement those quite well. The work that we're doing on that will probably help inform what this finds and the recommendations here. If we made any recommendation on this, it would be to ask that the recommendations that come out of the reports be actionable. I don't know if that's necessary to say, but the idea being that even with the first interim report in October of this year, that there may be something that the state legislature can take up that can help us, or that it might inform our county council to be able to take some sort of action.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks. Yeah, I think this makes sense and is good. my one, reaction in reading this is nothing to do with kind of the content of the study. I think the studies is likely going to focus on the right things, but it feels like another example of, studying issues that we've sort of studied to death, at least in our case, in this county. And we've talked so much, at least this board, since we've been here for nearly 3 years now, we've talked so much about the need, the challenges, the obstacles, the recommendations. We've been, and you all, and I think have been really creative in proposing solutions. And it's not for lack of analysis or creativity or, community engagement and input. I think we sort of generally understand what some of the challenges have been in kind of moving the needle on this. That being said, if DHCD reaches the end of this and comes up with actionable recommendations like you mentioned, and it has a lot, they socialize it well with all the relevant important parties, and it gets some traction, then that's good. So yeah, I guess I support it. Thanks.
Yeah, my piece is that I agree with Vice Chair. For many reasons, we do a lot of studies and on a lot of data-driven studies. But if is it like they don't believe us, or sometimes when you have someone else to do it and then present it to folks, that it's more believable. They say, yes, you're right, yes. So I'm open to saying yes, only for the latter reason, not for the former reason, because I think we do great studies. So that's my point here.
I'm just wondering that, is there anywhere the name to coordinate with the planning department? So maybe it's just that they want to make sure that the coordination is happening. I don't know.
It is, I think, in part to be able to have an outside view, a look at what's going on in Montgomery County. And from a state perspective, being able to increase housing production in Montgomery County will go a long way towards the state meeting its goals from housing. So there is state interest in making sure that we unclog things here. I think that, in the draft position statement, we talk about it building upon the existing collaborative relationship that we have with DHCD. So they would be required to report not just to the state, to the delegation, but our county council and to us. So, and we would work closely with them on this.
But is that funding attached to this?
We're not from us.
Yeah, for them.
But it would, I would assume that there would be a fiscal impact on this for the state.
Okay.
So we can wrap. We have support with the amendments.
I don't think it could just be support.
Yeah, support. Yep. So do I have a motion for approval of to support this with amendments?
Yeah, move to support with amendments.
Second.
I don't think we have any amendments, did we?
I thought it was the actionable.
Well, the question is whether you want to add that. The draft at this point does not say.
But they say make recommendations.
Yeah.
You want to just say actionable recommendation? Well, I think I'm good with that.
Is it?
I think we're fine.
Okay, yeah, sounds good.
Yeah. Okay,
Support with
second.
comments, I suppose, is the best way to put it.
Yeah.
All in
I
favor?
think if you do support, it'll get, and you want to add recommendations, then it would be support with amendments for the record.
Okay.
It would be support with amendments.
Then that.
Yeah.
Then support with amendments.
Right, with the one amendment, the actionable item. Okay,
Do I need to second it again or I'm
Yes.
good? Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. The ayes have it, 5-0. I think that's it for today? Yeah,
Well, we actually have two, I'm sorry, we have two more,
okay.
but they're just for your situational awareness. These only apply in Prince George's County. I just don't want you to be surprised if you're out and about and you hear about them. So the first one is House Bill 1452. It establishes a Prince George's County Suitland Development Authority. We are proposing that the Prince George's Board support this bill with an amendment. The amendment would add that a member of the Suitland Development Authority needs to either be the Prince George's chair or designee. And so we'd like to participate in the board. So we're proposing that later at the Prince George's board. And again, I just wanted you to be aware of it. The next bill is the TIF bill. So the tax increment financing, House Bill 1247. This is the Sphere TIF. You may have already heard about that. There's been a lot of press about the Sphere project in Prince George's County at National Harbor. This is very similar to the TIF that we did in support of the FBI project. You may not know that when they were in the run up to that project before it was canceled, the FBI project in Greenbelt, there was a TIF that we had been enabled to put into place. It never was put into place because the project was canceled. This is the same thing. It's enabling language that enables the commission to put in a tax increment financing resolution. Basically, we would have to pass a resolution that would describe exactly how the TIF would function, and it would not have any impact on Montgomery. This has already been reviewed by Gavin, as well as Secretary Treasurer Gavin Cohen and Budget Director Terry Bacote Charles. They had an opportunity to review this, and they were fine with it. So I, again, just wanted to let you know that this is happening so that if you're out and about and you hear about it, you're not surprised. Okay,
One question,
any issues, questions?
and just a clarification, it's run through the commission because it's on the Prince George Commission property? Is that why it's TIF?
The tax increment financing is on the Prince George's tax. So as the property assessment rises because of the development, the incremental rise in that tax revenue will be pledged to the bonds that will be sold for this purpose. So the bonds get tied to that tax increment as it goes up. And that is what gets pledged to pay the bonds back.
Okay, so it's not because it's on the property, it's because they're using their tax, the funding that they get for Prince George's Parks and Rec and planning, they're using that tax to pledge for this TIF project, correct?
Yes, they're using the proposed increase.
Right.
So it's not money that we currently have. It's not money that we would ever have if this project doesn't go forward.
Yeah.
So it's only money that we would have if the project actually happens and the value of the land goes up. Then we would have that increment that would then be pledged to the bond. And again, this wouldn't happen unless and until we have a resolution that would be drafted as a collaboration between OGC and the Secretary Treasurer and our budget manager to make sure that it is, in line with what it's supposed to be. It would also be reviewed by bond counsel because it is associated with a bond sale.
Yeah.
And then we would present it to you as the full commission for approval. So nothing is going to happen just with this enabling language. A lot of work has to be done in order to actually put it into place. And of course, the project has to go forward in order for it to come to fruition.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Can I ask just a clarifying question about the need for the state enabling legislation? So, on the Montgomery side, I think we recently did maybe the first TIF in the county, or the first TIF in a while with Viva White Oak. And that, I don't think that required state enabling legislation. I guess I'm just curious why in this instance there needs to be the enabling legislation from the state to allow kind of the creation of the TIF district, the special taxing district for this purpose. Is it because it's related to MNC PPC or other reasons?
Yes, it's because it's related to MNC PPC, and our everything that we do organizationally is determined by the provisions of the land use article. And it's my understanding, I can't remember exactly, but I think that the language that was in there was very narrow and basically applied to the FBI. You know, it was, you can do it if it's this and it's this and it's this, and it's basically applying to the FBI.
Yeah.
And so they needed to adjust that language to allow for something like this, which is a completely different type of development. So that's my understanding of the reason they needed to do
Okay,
this.
got it. Yeah, that makes sense. Thanks.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, and that
Thanks.
completes our report for this
Okay,
week.
thank you so much. Thanks for bringing these last two to our attention.
Ms. Borden, thanks for another outstanding presentation. I appreciate the information, insight you lend us in helping make decisions on the proposed legislation. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you so much.
All right, so we're going to take a 2-minute break and start with our next item, which is 3 ZTA, ZTA 2602, 2603, and 2604. Thank you. Good morning. We have three ZTAs that we're going over this morning. Item number 7 is ZTA 2602 Overlay Zones Regional Shopping Center. ZTA 2603 Biohealth Priority Campus Eligibility. And the last is ZTA 2604 Mixed Use Housing Community Eligibility. And Mr. Ben Burbert of the Planning Department is going to go through all three with us. Welcome.
Thank you. Ben Burbert for the record with the Design, Placemaking, and Policy Division. I'm actually going to walk you through the first two this morning, and my colleague, Ms. Prendergast, is going to walk through the third ZTA today. The first one on our agenda is 2602 Overlay Zones Regional Shopping Center. Staff is recommending the board support this ZTA with some minor technical amendments. The ZTA as introduced would exempt properties within the RSC overlay zone from the 30% cap on household living for multi-unit living, as long as the overlay zone maintains a minimum of 600,000 square feet of retail space. This was introduced on January 27th by Council President Fanny Gonzalez and Councilmember Friedson. District Council public hearing is tentatively scheduled for March 3rd. For the RSC overlay zone, there are two of those in the county, one of them covering the Westfield Montgomery Mall and the other covering the Westfield Wheaton Mall. Both of these overlay zones are unique that they have the GR zone as their base zone. And the reason we're really here today is that the GR zone, as well as the other employment zones, have a 30% limit on the amount of floor area that can be used for household living. You might remember this was actually originally removed back at the beginning of last year. Concerns were raised that this could have a negative impact on community serving retail, and so they put the restriction back. We're basically back today saying regional shopping centers aren't community serving retail. These are very big properties that have development potential and maybe should have some flexibility. The main change in the ZTA is in the development standards for household living. It specifically has sort of been buried under 331EA sub 1, which is the multi-unit living GR provisions for the zone. It's a very specific place that they've buried that in. I think one of the concerns staff has is that as this has been introduced, only multi-unit living would be exempt from the 30% cap. And that maybe it was okay and is intended, but how would you calculate the rest of the residential uses if they wanted to bring them? Would they be allowed to go up to 30% and only the apartments go over? It created a little bit of an accounting issue. We've actually talked to the sponsor and some council staff, and they're okay with the recommendation here to just loosen it up so that all household living types would be exempt from the 30% cap. The other thing that we noted from this is that the same provision limiting the 30% is also found in the development standard table for the GR zone, and that also would need to have a provision here in the overlay zone exempting that section. And so what is shown on the screen below are the amendments that we're recommending, stating that any limitation within 331, which is household living, be removed, and then also that section 463C also have that provision removed. There was a climate assessment performed for this ZTA, found mostly minor impacts, both positive and negative related to greenhouse gas emissions. The primary negative is just the increased building emissions that's associated with any development. The positive is that this would encourage mixed-use development, reducing transportation impacts associated with mixed-use development. There's no anticipated impact on sequestration. These sites are already developed, so we're not changing land cover or other features that really affect sequestration. And this would have indirect positive impacts on adaptive capacity and resiliency, again, really because there'd be better transportation access to jobs and services. Particularly, both of these RSC overlay zones actually have very large transit hubs near them. So it's not even just the mixed-use development. There's a lot of transit access both to Montgomery Mall and Wheaton Mall. And so these are benefits we see. So in conclusion, staff is recommending the board transmit a memo to the District Council supporting ZTA 2602 with the minor technical revisions that we've discussed, as well as transmission of the climate assessment.
We're good. Just want to wait a second till Commissioner Linden comes in, and we can vote on it right away. Okay.
Yep.
So, do I have a motion to approve of the ZTA 2602 overlay zones where planning board is transmitting comments and a climate assessment to the district council?
Yeah, move to transmit the memo with the recommendations and minor revisions to the council and the climate assessment.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, the ayes have it, 5-0. Next, please.
All right, next we will talk about ZTA 2603, the BioHealth Priority Campus eligibility. This is the first of what is actually 2 ZTAs before the board today that are in the spirit of looking at the eligible projects we have for our expedited approval plans and trying to make some minor adjustments to them to make sure we actually take use of this process. We've had a couple of applications come through. I think it was fewer than council had sort of hoped for and anticipated, and so they are looking to see how we can better align some of our provisions with reality to get more projects eligible for this new process. This one's specific to the BioHealth Priority Campus use, and so staff is recommending the board support this ZTA with just a minor technical amendment. This is changing the eligibility requirements in the definition section of BioHealth Priority Campus to make it a little bit easier for these projects to qualify for the expedited approval plan process. And it's also making a quick reference change from Corridor City Transit Way to the corridor connectors. This ZTA was also introduced on January 27th by Council members Friedson and co-sponsored by Council President Fanny Gonzalez and Council members Ludke, Balcom, Evans, and Stewart. There is also a public hearing for this item coming up on March 3rd. Again, as I sort of said before, this is modifying the standards of a BioHealth Priority Campus. Specifically here, it is reducing the construction threshold from 150,000 square feet down to 100,000 square feet. It reduces the additions to existing business threshold from 50,000 square feet down to 25,000 square feet. And the third thing it's doing is it allows the repurposing of existing space from a new or an expanding business to count. The way it's written currently, it needs to be new construction. I will say it's possible businesses could do a renovation on existing space and not trigger any sort of plan, and so some of these aren't necessary, but you could have a situation where it's a major renovation and they want to change the outside of the building and change the layout, and that would normally trigger a site plan, and so this would at least give the option for those to come through an expedited approval process. It's also worth noting the biohealth industry is a little bit on ice right now, unfortunately. We don't expect a huge surge of interest in this in the short term. We are hoping this does send the message sort of in the medium to long term that we are open to business and willing to work with these businesses and to keep this industry as the thriving one in Montgomery County. Again, as I said, the other thing here, this does replace the Corridor City Transit Way with corridor connectors, as consistent with some other times we've run into this in the code. The actual main technical amendment staff wants to bring to attention is, as happened earlier last year, we took what used to be a BioHealth Priority Campus plan and a signature business headquarter plan and a mixed income plan, and we consolidated them all under the expedited approval plan type. We thought we caught all of those when we did that initial ZTA. It turns out we use these words a lot in the code in places we didn't realize. And so we found a couple of old section references in this section still. So we are just recommending that the board let council know that we found them and that they should be corrected as part of this ZTA. Again, a climate assessment was prepared for this ZTA. Very similar to the previous one, some very minor impacts that might be associated with new construction, positive impacts. And this one in particular encourages new employment uses near transit. One of the qualifying features of a signature business headquarters is proximity to transit. And so that would help create jobs that are accessible and might reduce vehicle use. Similar indeterminate impacts on sequestration, really depending on the existing site conditions as to whether or not this is going to have a negative or positive impact. And again, some of those indirect positive impacts on adaptive capacity and resiliency by creating better job access near transit, making for a more resilient economy. Again, in conclusion, staff is recommending supporting a transmittal memo supporting ZTA 2603 with the technical updates around the expedited approval plan process and the climate assessment.
Thank you so much. Before we end, I know we have one more, but I know it's going to be just as good. But I I thank you and your staff for, you know, the very thorough, in-depth review of these ETAs. I mean, it's, you know, the things that you catch or the things, you know, you are forward-thinking and your deep dives, and so I really appreciate that. And then also, and I to compliment the council for, you know, like forward-thinking, like even though we aren't getting a lot of these today or whatever, but looking ahead, what impediments do we need to take away to create more of a business-friendly climate, you know? So I really appreciate that. So you don't just have to do it in the moment. We're thinking ahead, they're thinking ahead, like what do we need and how we can make our county better in the long run. So thank you to our council for that. So we have one more today. This is ZTA 2604.
If I may, do we want to take a quick vote on this one?
Okay. Yeah, do I have a motion to approve the ZTA, our comments, transmit our comments and a climate assessment to the district council for ZTA 2603?
Yeah. Move to transmit comments and a climate assessment to the council for ZTA 2603.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. The ayes have it. 5-0. Ms. Pendergast.
Good morning, everyone. Kayla Prendergast for the record, Design, Placemaking, and Policy, and I'm here today to discuss CTA 2604, Mixed Income Community Eligibility. Staff recommends that the Planning Board support ZTA 2604 as introduced with some minor fixes to references to the outdated Mixed Income Community Plan as Ben referenced in his presentation. ZTA 2604 would lower the eligibility threshold with the intent of allowing more projects to go through the expedited approval plan process under the mixed income community housing plan definition. Similar to Ben's other two ZTAs, this was introduced on January 27th by Council members Friedson and Sales with co-sponsors Council Member Ludke, Council President Fanny Gonzalez, and Council members Balcom and Evans, and a council public hearing is scheduled for March 3rd. So ZTA 2604 proposes modifications to the definition of a mixed income housing community established through ZTA 2302 in 2023. And mixed income housing community plans allow for expedited review for projects with high levels of affordable housing, specifically reduced review time that allows for a planning board hearing within 60 days of intake acceptance. Since its adoption in July 2023, the Planning Board has approved only one mixed income housing community plan. So ZTA 2604 evaluates that expedited review process, which has produced fewer projects than anticipated. And through coordination with council staff, planning staff identified some eligibility barriers that are limiting project participation. So this slide shows the changes that were made to the eligibility thresholds based on the planning and council staff analysis. As it stands today, a mixed income housing community is intended to target larger projects that can support deeper levels of affordability. They must have at least 150,000 square feet of residential floor area, at least 30 dwelling units, and must meet one of the 4 affordability thresholds outlined in the slide. So ZTA 2604 proposes changes that expand the eligibility criteria, as I mentioned, and the first modification includes eliminating the 150,000 square feet of residential floor area minimum. Analysis showed that there were a number of projects that met the other eligibility criteria, but were in some cases just a couple thousand square feet smaller than 150,000. And then the next change was to increase the number of dwelling units to ensure that projects are still providing a sizable number of units, so from 30 to 50 as the minimum number of dwelling units. And then lastly, adding projects that receive 4% low-income housing tax credits, in addition to those that receive the 9% low-income housing tax credits as a qualifying affordability option. This lines up with the recent Faith CTA, which also added 4%. So yeah, similar to what Ben mentioned, planning staff recommends a minor technical update throughout the document to references of the outdated mixed income housing community plan under section 7.37, which eliminated under ZTA 2503, along with multiple other specialized plan types, and were replaced with the general expedited approval plan. For the climate assessment, the analysis found that the ZTA anticipated no significant climate-related impacts regarding greenhouse gas emissions and sequestration, adaptive capacity, community resilience, or implementation of the climate action plan. The analysis found that its primary effect was to expand eligibility for long-term affordable housing, which supports community resilience without altering land cover or emissions. And staff did receive one letter of testimony related to ZTA 2604. The testimony is generally supportive of the ZTA and the effort to incentivize projects that include much-needed affordable housing. The letter proposes one amendment to the first qualifying affordability option. Instead of requiring units affordable to under 60% AMI, the commenter suggests allowing projects where at least 50% of units are affordable at MPDU eligible income levels, typically between 65 and 70% AMI or below. And I think, council took the lead in developing this ZTA, and the affordability thresholds developed under ZTA 2302, the former ZTA that defined mixed income housing communities, and underwent extensive analysis to ensure a focus on providing deep affordability to address the need in the county not met by MPDUs. And as such, staff is noting this as input, but the comment would address the depth of affordability intended for the mixed income housing communities. And so with that, planning staff recommend the board transmit a memo to the district council supporting ZTA 2604 with the minor technical revisions, including the climate assessment.
Great. So just to be clear, you're not supporting the requested amendment from, okay, great, okay. Yep, thank you so much. Yeah, I agree with you that it looks as if the council wanted this to be for tax credit projects that provided for lower income, and if this person wanted to submit their, wanted this, they should just submit it during public testimony, and if the council wants to address it, they address it. But I agree with you that we should not incorporate that proposed change. Wonderful. So I'm definitely in support of this ZTA with your comments. Any other questions or comments?
No.
Just a question around, it sounds like this was a coordinated effort with staff and council staff to try to kind of do these tweaks. Does this sort of, in your opinion, does this including the 4% LIHTC, does that really get at the heart of removing the 150 square foot and the LIHTC? Does that get at the heart of why maybe we haven't seen more than one of these, notwithstanding maybe the past year more difficult conditions for other market or policy reasons?
Lisa Gavoni, for the record, design, placemaking, and policy. So one of the things we did do is we did kind of a historical deep dive in 2023, looking at LIHTC projects and kind of looked at their various sizes. We think that this addresses one of the barriers, certainly not all of them. The intent was always to have this be only for projects to provide a depth of affordability. So we don't expect to receive a lot of these projects, and that's by design. But we do think that adding 4% projects adds another qualifier that would enable more eligible projects to take advantage. So we think that this is a good balance between getting more projects, but not too many that it overwhelms our staff.
Yeah.
Sure, right, that makes sense.
Yeah. 4% being non-competitive means that there are orders of magnitude more fours than there are nines.
Yeah.
And even fours typically are layered with different types of affordability, like vouchers and other subsidies that are layered into the project. So they tend to, the practical affordability tends not to actually be all that different between a 9% and a 4% tax credit property, all told.
Yeah.
But they tend to be layered.
And just a quick second thing. So right now, it seems like the affordability options are an or, not in like an and, or sort of a combination of those options. Is that right?
Sure. So it's you basically have four options. We align them with the existing by right pilot, the HOC production fund, the LIHTC program, and then another one that is affordability thresholds that kind of targets deep affordability at that 30% level. So it's there or.
Did we consider? Did the council staff, or do we consider, or is this maybe not kind of enough to move the needle, allowing a combination of these categories in some way, I don't know enough to know if kind of like how these projects are structured, that this would make sense or not make sense, but did that come up in any way, just kind of changing the eligibility options, I guess, in that sense?
It did not. I think last time when we initially look at this ZTA, there were affordability thresholds that weren't really, as proposed, weren't really aligned with programs or existing policies.
Yeah.
So what the planning board actually did is we provided recommendations or amendments to align them with existing policies and programs. And so that was pretty much the extent of the discussion in 2023. And then we're, further broadening the eligibility now.
Okay.
But
Thanks.
I would, based on my past experience, yeah, some tax credit deals will have one and two, like they will have a combination of some of these, And I also think that first one, eliminating the 150,000 square feet, would be helpful to others, even if they didn't add the 4%, because a lot of tax credit deals, they're so, like, as you said in your report, they, these days, a typical deal may only be 50 units, which if an average unit is 1,000 square feet, just use a 50,000 square feet, so they couldn't get to the 150,000 square foot threshold. So there may be 50 to 75 units, 50 to 80 units. Only very large projects could get over that. So I think that that's another reason that they wanted this. Had heard from some of the nonprofits that 150 was too high a limit. So yeah. So okay, all good here. We hope that this creates more projects. Yeah. So do I have a motion to on ZTA 2604 to transmit the planning staff's comments and a climate assessment to the district council?
Yeah, I'll move to transmit comments to the county council, and comments on the climate assessment to the county council.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, the ayes have it, 5-0. Thank you so much. We really appreciate this. And then we're going to just take a short break and then start out with our next item, item 12, MCPS fiscal year 2732 capital improvement program, Board of Education's request versus the county executive's recommendation. I'll be back in 1 minute. Thank you. Good morning. We're on item number 12, the MCPS fiscal year 2732 Capital Improvement Program Board of Education's request versus the county executive's recommendation, where staff is recommending that we transmit comments to the county council and the Board of Education. This morning we have Jesus Beck with the Planning Department presenting this item. Welcome.
Thank you. Good morning. For the record, I'm Jesus Beck, Adequate Public Facilities Planner in the Design, Placemaking, and Policy Division. Today we'll be going over MCPS's fiscal year 27 through 32 Capital Improvements Program. First, we'll compare the Board of Education's request and the county executive's recommendation. We'll then look at the list of projects being considered at individual schools, and then discuss the affordability reconciliation, which is the undesignated gap between the county executive's recommendation and the Board of Ed's request that would have to be resolved. We'll also talk about the site design consideration comments that Planning and Parks staff has been providing for new projects in the CIP, and which we have done again this year, and conclude with the next steps and a staff recommendation. So for the FY 27 through 32 CIP, the Board of Education requested a 6-year total of $2.79 billion, which is comparing to the previous 6-year total over $1 billion more and a 50% increase. This may come as a surprise, especially in light of MCPS's declining enrollment projections. But to provide some background here, after last year's CIP review for FY 26, the Planning Board transmitted a letter to the Council calling attention to the shift in MCPS's enrollment and utilization trends, and suggested addressing the county's aging public school infrastructure instead of continuously increasing capacity at the few overutilized schools. And MCPS responded. At the beginning of this fiscal year's CIP process, the superintendent stated that the school system is making a deliberate shift from its previous focus on chasing capacity to addressing aging infrastructure. But to be able to do the replacement and upgrade projects necessary to bring the system up to date, he said it would require more than $5 billion. So in light of that, this request is, as ambitious as it may seem, only a fraction of the stated needs from MCPS. The county executive, on the other hand, staying grounded financially, recommended a $2.14 billion total, which is $380 million more than the previous 6-year total, but it still falls short of the Board of Ed's request by $652.3 million. To see what this looks like year to year, here's a graph that compares each version of the CIP. So the gray bars here show the last 4 years of the FY 25 through 30 CIP. The first 2 years are behind us. But this amended total of the 6 years, including the previous 2 years behind us, was $1.76 billion. The red bars here, towering above the grays, show what the Board of Ed is requesting for the FY 27 through 32 CIP. And the navy blue bars, finally, are showing the county executive's recommendation, which is an increase from the amended CIP for the first 4 years, but they're still noticeably shorter than the red bars, especially for the first 5 years, in the first 5 years, and especially so for the 3rd and 4th year, FY 29 and FY 30. Now to see what implications that shortfall may have, we're going to take a look at the individual schools in the Board of Ed's request first. There are also countywide systemic projects and other items in MCPS's CIP, but our focus is mainly on individual school projects and what MCPS refers to as major capital projects for major facility upgrades at schools, because those are the most relevant to our work concerning adequate public facilities or site design considerations. So with that said, the Board of Ed's request includes 13 projects at individual schools, some of which are major capital projects. 5 of them are already in construction stage. There are 2 elementary schools that are scheduled to be completed this summer, and the 3 high school projects, Crown, Northwood, and Woodward, are scheduled to be complete in 2027 and are closely tied to the current boundary study at the middle school and high school levels. So the completion as scheduled is pretty important. There are also 3 projects already approved in the current CIP, but have not gone under construction yet. And then there are 5 new projects that were added for consideration in the Board of Ed's request for this FY 27 through 32 CIP. So in the past, the county executive typically only discussed the overall budget and did not go into individual line items. But this year, there's a bit of a change. And as you can see, he is recommending some very specific reductions. These are only showing the ones for individual school projects. He has recommended some reductions to countywide items as well. But for the individual school projects, the first one is a partial reduction of the project funds requested for Eastern Middle School. He's not supporting the capacity increase here. So the recommendation would still keep the project in the CIP, but without the proposed capacity increase. Similarly, the last item, Sligo Middle School, the county executive does not support the capacity increase, but his recommendation is excluding the funding for the project entirely. In reality, for MCPS to go forward with this project, they'll very likely need a holding center that can hold a middle school, and for future projects, perhaps high schools as well. Because for a lot of these major capital projects, MCPS will need a place for the students to be transferred to temporarily while the building is being addressed. And MCPS right now does not have that option.
Can I ask one quick question on that? So for Eastern Middle School, does that capital project, so he's suggesting taking away the capacity, but is that project rebuilding the school, or is it just a how does that relate to the need for a holding school as well?
So Eastern Middle School as well is a major capital project, so the school is being considered to be rebuilt. Currently, the option that MCPS is pursuing, at the beginning of the project process, they did discuss several options, and planning's preferred option was to rebuild the school in the same site that it currently is, because it is close to the streets, the way urban design, like preferences are. But because of the limitations, MCPS's current approach is to build a school on the field while the current building remains. And once the new building is built, the students will be moved into the new building, and then the current building would be demolished and be turned into fields. So that, for now, without an option for holding centers, is probably how MCPS would have to go forward with these major capital projects.
Got it. So without getting in the weeds of this particular project, they're proposing to put the play fields directly next to University Boulevard?
That is very likely what we're looking at, and the comments, we'll get to it later. The comments for Eastern Middle School had been transmitted with both options possible, but we re-examined the comments based on that option and are sending updated comments to MCPS based on the fields being towards University Boulevard.
Okay.
Unfortunately.
Very, very unfortunately.
And we did relay comments to MCPS that if that is the only possible outcome because of the site constraints, that they should really focus on ensuring that there's a proper buffer that's designed for the play fields, that there are dense plantings of street trees along University Boulevard, there's vegetation, and that access to the fields is mostly from the secondary streets.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
Okay, and the third project from individual school projects that are on the county executive's chopping board is Sligo Creek Elementary School, which in the Board of Ed's request was proposed as a replacement project at an alternate site, not where it currently is. But again, if we track back to last year's CIP review, planning encouraged MCPS to expand their boundary study to include elementary schools where we're seeing the most imbalance of utilization across schools even that are adjacent to each other. And MCPS responded by introducing a countywide elementary school boundary study in this CIP as a non-capital item that would be starting in a couple years. So the county executive's recommendation for Sligo Creek Elementary School is to defer the project until that elementary school boundary study is complete and there's a better understanding of the utilization levels of schools that are near each other.
Does this relate to maybe, I don't know if it's final or not, but the considerations around SIMS as well? And does SIMS make an appearance in the CIP in any way?
So currently, the Silver Spring International Middle School consideration did not make it on the Board of Education's request. The remnants of it were showing as the capacity increases at Sligo Middle School and Eastern Middle School, which is the part that the county executive did not support.
Right.
Sligo Creek Elementary School replacement was still being considered in the Board of Ed's request, despite SIMS being deferred to later CIPs, but the county executive is recommending that that be kept on hold as well.
Okay, got it. Thanks.
Okay. So now this graph shows the gap that still remains between the Board of Ed's CIP request after taking into consideration these specific reductions that the county executive mentioned, but still comparing it to the funding level that the county executive recommended, because he did not completely itemize every single item that would meet his funding level recommendation. So the wide color block bars with gray, green, orange, and purple that is outlined in red represents the projects that are remaining in the Board of Ed's request. So this color block bar is shorter than the tall red bars that we saw earlier because it's assuming the specified reductions from the county executive. The gray blocks at the bottom, this is assuming a logical priority for MCPS. Doesn't mean MCPS will follow this priority order, but just assuming by logic. The gray blocks at the bottom account for the countywide projects. The green projects on top of that are the ones that are already under construction. The orange bars, the orange blocks, are the projects that are approved but haven't gotten into construction stage yet. And then the purple bars that appear at the top later on are the new CIP projects that are being considered. And then the narrow blue bars in between each of these bars are the county executive's recommended funding level, which is the same as the blue bars that we saw earlier next to the red and gray bars. So the gap between the blue bar and this stacked color block bar with the red outline shows what the county executive refers to as the affordability reconciliation, which implies that MCPS will have to make additional cuts and or deferrals to meet the recommended CIP level. As you can see, the first 3 years of the CIP, the recommended funding pretty much only covers, outside of the countywide projects, the projects that are already under construction. So it's very likely that the projects that have been approved will have to be delayed compared to their approved schedules, approved completion years. But to make the decisions about which projects will be deferred and how to resolve these is usually made after MCPS provides a list of non-recommended reductions. So they are reductions that could be considered, but that are not really recommended by MCPS. So that list of reductions will be reviewed with the council's ENC committee and then be discussed later when the entire CIP is being reviewed by the full council. So it's unclear whether any of the new CIP projects will remain in the CIP, But regardless, in light of the planning process MOU that we've established with MCPS previously, in an effort to have earlier collaboration on capital projects, Planning and Parks staff did a high-level review of these new school projects at Burning Tree Elementary School, Highland View Elementary School, and Eastern Middle School again, which is not really a new CIP project added, but has some changes, and then is also part of the Eastern Middle School, Eastern Silver Spring Master Plan process. So this project was re-examined, and Planning and Parks staff compiled a list of site design considerations that we would like to transfer to the council and the Board of Ed so that MCPS could take into consideration as early as possible in their CIP process. One good thing is, if you can see on the left side, as before the Burning Tree Elementary School appeared on the CIP for the process, MCPS has already reached out to planning staff. So the early collaboration efforts, as was outlined in the MOU, is already taking place, but as we've done in previous years, we're still collecting these comments and transmitting to the council for official documentation.
Yeah, and I just wanted to take a minute here and recognize our colleagues at MCPS. I don't know if they're hearing or not, but there's been a lot of new staff at MCPS as well as older staff, and people like Ms. Andrea Shviatoka, Mr. Adnan Mamoon, Ms. Shiho, Mr. DJ, Ms. Julie Morris. They've really sort of embraced the MOU and are actively reaching out to us to talk about these projects as early as possible and get our feedback and take that with sincerity and gravity and try to respond to our comments. Now, sometimes because of a site constraint and the lack of a holding school, things have to be done in a certain way, but even in those conditions, we are trying to really elevate the quality of the design of these schools so that they're truly civic buildings, sustainable buildings, places of learning for our children. So really, I think that MOU was a multi-year effort led by Mr. Sartori here, and that is starting to yield results here. So that's very, very encouraging to see.
So we won't go over the specific detailed comments that were compiled, but overall, they reflect the county's Vision Zero goals, climate action plan targets, and the Thrive 2050 priorities. And the list of these comments are attached to the staff report as Attachment A. And the next thing is the Council's Education and Culture Committee will be discussing MCPS's CIP and the list of non-recommended reductions on February 23rd and any remaining items on March 9th. So staff's recommendation is that the Planning Board transmit the comments in Attachment A to the Council ENC Committee. That concludes the presentation.
Okay, thank you for your report. You have your way with data, and it's really easy to see the gaps. So thank you for thinking through that and presenting it in a very easy to understand way. So I have no additional comments. I agree with the recommendations you have in Attachment A. I'd like to hear from my other colleagues. Bartley.
Well, I'm disappointed in the county executive's proposed budget, especially taking into consideration the blueprint for Maryland's future, a state initiative to improve our schools and the outcomes for our students. I'm hopeful that the budget will be adjusted to meet the requirements of MCPS. Thanks.
Thank you for those comments. Yes, given Ms. Beck's presentation, yeah, all of those projects can't be done. There's a big gap. So thank you. Do I have a motion to approve transmitting staff's comments to the County Council and the Board of Education?
Yeah, I'll move to approve the comments and transmit them to the District Council and the Board of Education.
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The ayes have it 5-0. We'll just take a 2-minute break and start with item number 11. The 19101 Darnestown Road Administrative Subdivision Final Forest Conservation Plan, where staff is recommending approval with conditions. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back. We're on item 11, 19101 Darnestown Road Administrative Subdivision Plan, and Final Forest Conservation Plan. And we have Jane Puser from staff presenting. Apologies if I mispronounced your last name.
That's all right. I just want to point out that this is Jane's first item with the board, so I'd like to welcome her. Yeah, very excited about her recent promotion in Up County, so you'll be seeing more of her soon.
Great. Welcome.
Thank you. Good morning. So for the record, I'm Jane Pizer, planner with Up County, and I'm the lead reviewer for Administrative Subdivision Plan number 620260050, and I'll be presenting that along with Final Forest Conservation Plan number F20260200. So staff recommends approval with conditions for both the Administrative Subdivision Plan and the Final Forest Conservation Plan. To subdivide the existing parcel, the subdivision will create one lot for one new residential detached unit. The subject property is located west of the intersection of Darnestown Road, which is State Highway Maryland 28, and Jerusalem Road, which is classified as a rustic road. Surrounding properties are primarily used for agriculture and rural open space, with some farm accessory structures and single-family dwellings. The subject property is located within the Upper Dry Seneca Creek watershed. The property is within the Agricultural Reserve, or AR Zone, and is within the 1980 Preservation of Agricultural and Rural Open Space Functional Master Plan area. This master plan is also known as the ARROS Plan, and I will be referring to it as such throughout this presentation. Neighboring properties are also within the AR Zone. The subject property is a 16.38 acre lot and has frontage on Darnestown Road and Jerusalem Road. The property is currently undeveloped and has a 4.16 acres of forest on the northwestern portion of the property. Property also has 6.07 acres of stream valley buffer, and a 100-year floodplain exists, which is located within the forested area. The applicant has fulfilled all noticing requirements, including signposting and mailing of the notice of application on November 17, 2025. Staff has mailed the notice of public hearing and received no community correspondence regarding this application. The application proposes to create one will be served by a private well and septic system. The applicant is dedicating 1.02 acres along both Darnestown Road and Jerusalem Road, with a new private driveway and access proposed from Jerusalem Road. There is a proposed conservation easement located towards the northwest property boundary. Given the deed history of the subject property, as outlined in the staff report, the current parcel was created on October 8, 1979. Therefore, the application is exempt from the area and dimensional requirements of the AR zone, but must meet the requirements of the rural zone. After dedication, the proposed 15.36 acre lot will meet the minimum lot area and frontage requirements of the prior rural zone. As stated earlier, the property is located near the intersection of Darnestown Road and Jerusalem Road. Per the 2023 Rustic Roads Functional Master Plan, Jerusalem Road is classified as a rustic road with a 70-foot ultimate right-of-way width. The application proposes to dedicate 35 feet from the pavement centerline, which is sufficient to achieve the ultimate right-of-way width. Pictured on the slide are the current conditions of Jerusalem Road along Jerusalem Road facing south from the perspective of its intersection with Darnestown Road. The property is located also within the 1980 ARROS Plan area, as mentioned earlier, and substantially conforms to the master plan by proposing development that is consistent with the requirements of the AR zone. Single-family dwellings and accessory uses, including agricultural activities, are permitted uses within the AR zone. And now I'm going to turn it over to Molly to go over the forest conservation portion.
Thank you, Jane. For the record, Molly Stamets with the Environment and Climate Division. So as stated, there is Final Forest Conservation Plan number F2026-200, or 0200, excuse me, submitted in concurrence with this application. For forest conservation purposes, the net tract area is 15.28 acres, and the land use category is agricultural resource area, and under forest conservation law, this requires on-site minimum forest retention to be at least 25% of the tract area. As you can see in the diagram, the forest is to the northwest of the property with an existing stream valley buffer as well. So with this application, 4.14 acres of existing forest will be retained, which exceeds the minimum retention requirement. 1.66 acres of planting will occur within the Stream Valley Buffer area, and in total, there will be a 5.86 acre Category 1 conservation easement with this application.
Thank you, Molly. For the findings, we find that the administrative subdivision conforms to the 1980 Preservation of Agricultural and Rural Open Space Functional Master Plan. Public facilities are adequate, complies with all provisions of the subdivision regulations. The lot is appropriate with respect to size, shape, width, and orientation for the proposed use, considering the legacy provisions. It complies with Chapter 22A Forest Conservation. And it meets the applicable development standards of both the rural zone and the AR zone, respectively. Staff recommends approval with conditions of Administrative Subdivision Plan number 620260050 and Final Forest Conservation Plan number F202600200. And with that, staff is available as well as the applicant for any questions you might have.
Thank you. So before we get to questions or comments from us, would the applicant care to make a statement?
Thank you, Dave McKee, Benning and Associates. I'm just here to answer questions. Thank you to Jane and Molly for helping us get to this point, and we support the recommendations. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Just to kick things off, I don't have a lot of questions, but I was wondering, and I apologize if this was in the staff report and I missed it, but currently the site, there's no improved structure on the site. Does the site have a history of agricultural use, or is it currently being used for ag use?
I'd like to defer to the applicant to answer that.
It's been used for crops over the years, hay probably for the most part, but that's about it.
Okay. All right, I don't have any other questions. Maya, any questions from others?
I really didn't have a question about the project itself. I think it looks good, and the afforestation is good on the Stream Valley Buffer, and I think that's a positive step on there, and putting it in a permanent easement along it. I just is it the size that triggered the planning board approval, or is it the size of the 5 acre plus that?
Yes.
Because we've been doing some administrative as approval without the planning board. I was wondering, that's the size is what triggered.
So any lot over 5 acres in the AR zone has to be approved by the planning board.
Okay, great. All right, that was my only question for an administrative subdivision. Otherwise, I think it looked great.
Any other questions, comments? Okay. Seeing none, do we have a motion to approve administrative subdivision plan number 620260050, Final Forest Conservation Plan F202600200 with conditions?
I'll move to approve the administrative subdivision plan for 10101 Darnestown Road, as well as the Final Forest Conservation Plan with the conditions included.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right. Unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to switch over to another session. Okay, we'll be back in 1 minute. Thank you. Hi, everyone. Welcome back. We're on item 10, our last item of the day. Olney Theater Center Site Plan Amendment, number 82001022F. And from staff, we have Troy Leftwich presenting.
Troy Leftwich for the record, presenting Only Theater Site Plan Amendment 82001022F. The property is located at 2001 Only Sandy Springs Road, east of Only Town Center, north of MD 180. His majority zone PCC zone, and it's also has a small portion of split zoning of RE2 in the lower left corner of the site. It's also within the 2005 only master plan area. The project consists of the site area consists of 10.5 acres. It's improved with the Only Theater Center. It has 3 separate entrances off of MD 108. It has 3 surface parking lots, 1 in the front and 2 in the rear. It also has a larger Category 1 easement at the northern eastern boundary of the site. It also has an existing side path at the main entrance to the west of the main entrance. The white circle represents the area of this amendment where the proposed existing side path is to be continued along the frontage. The reason why the board is seeing this, there was a condition as part of the E amendment that required the applicant to install the side path, and then through that process, SHA determined that SHA was also establishing a side path in the same location, and so in the essence of not doing 2 paths in the same area, it was determined that the applicant would no longer be required to do it, and SHA would proceed with their side path. So that resulted in a condition change, which is why you're seeing it today. So these red lines represent the removal of the side path from the applicant's requirement, and then in lieu of coming in for an amendment, they also determined that they were going to remove the geothermal wells out of the surface parking lot. So these 2 red lines represent those changes in their requirement. This image is just to represent the frontage area where the side pass was essentially going to start, and then the larger plan view shows the area where SHA is to construct that side path, so there will be a continuous side path along the frontage of the property site. There was 1 red line condition change. As part of the E amendment, there was a couple of notes in that certified set that said not for construction. That was, I think, caused a little bit of confusion with DPS, and so this is just a cleanup site plan change so that the certified sets will no longer say not for construction on certain plan sheets. So this is just more of a clarification as they go through the future entitlement process. At this time, we've received no correspondence, and all findings are previously made in effect and are not altered by this site plan. At this time, staff is recommending approval with conditions as revised for the Only Theater Site Plan Amendment 82001022F. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you. We have a representative from the applicant here. Would you like to make some comments?
Sure. Good morning, Vice Chair Linden and members of the board. Heather Delapolsky, land use and zoning attorney for Only Theater. I'm with Wire Gill. We do have our full team on the meeting today. I think Troy covered the history here very well. This actually goes back probably 2 years now when we were getting ready to seek permits from SHA for our construction of the side path. And in doing so, another branch of SHA realized that they themselves were also planning to implement a side path, and so we were going to have 2 parallel side paths, and we all sort of said this absolutely makes no sense whatsoever. And we're really actually able to work very well with SHA, MNSPPC, MCDPS right-of-way, I believe, MCDOT, to come up with the solution just that makes a lot more sense for everybody. So happy to answer any questions you may have.
Great, thank you. Yeah, the world's most comfortable side path would have been double wide.
Do you have to have a buffer between the side paths if you have 2 side paths? I don't know if we covered that in the
I think the pedestrian level of comfort would have been accelerated
Exceptionally high.
and met the pedestrian master plan.
Yeah, exceeded probably. Yeah, well, thank you. Yeah, appreciate you being here and comments. Interesting that geothermal was, it sounds like originally part of the site plan, now it's being removed. Is there any background related to that?
So they were never actually constructed. They were shown as being proposed for construction. We do have Dennis Blackledge and Fred Paul from Olney Theater on the meeting. If they would like to jump in and provide any commentary about why we are no longer proposing to implement the geothermal wells. And there's Dennis.
Hi, I think and Fred, please speak your piece here too. I think ultimately it was just a cost factor. Even though there were some generous rebates to be had, the whole project has been a big lift for the theater economically. We've done very well, but it was sort of at the edge of what we were capable of doing. And we had a viable system old school system in place. So Fred, would you like to add to that?
No, I think you pretty much covered it. It really came down to a budgetary decision of whether or not we were able to actually afford to move forward with the geothermal wells and do that. So ultimately, we decided against it.
Thank you. Yeah, well, it's interesting that you originally considered it. Thanks for considering it in the past. I think that it's obviously site specific and there is a cost, as you noted, but it would be very, very cool if we could have more geothermal kind of opportunities as part of sites like this or other developments. So it caught my eye when I saw it here, and glad that it was at least under consideration at some point, and hopefully for future projects we can do more of this. I don't have any other comments or questions. Anything else from
You took that when I was curious about the geothermal, but that was it. Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, well, seeing none, do we have a motion to approve the site plan amendment with conditions?
Yeah. I'll move to approve the Olney Theater site plan amendment with conditions.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great, thank you so much.
Thanks.
Good luck. See you next time we buy some tickets there.
All right. Well, that concludes the planning board meeting for today, and see you all next week. Have a good day.